So, in Donald Trump's, I would say, fight against China and their stronghold on our country, we've talked about the banning of Chinese nationals owning our farmland, which was huge. We talk a lot on the show about how China steals American intellectual property. And I don't know if many people know this. In December of 2023, China actually banned exports of its own IP. So they're like, we can do it, you can't. But it banned exports of its own IP regarding rare earth extraction methods, waste separation methods, rare earth magnet production technology it's like used by companies like Apple and consumer electronics, electric motors for EVs and drones and missiles and radar. And so is pretty significant because China produced 60% of the world's rare earth minerals, nearly 90% of the world's rare earth processing, and 99.9% of America's rare earth processing themselves. So for this country, they were producing almost 100% of America's rare earth processing. And of course, they're weaponizing that control of all of these rare earth minerals and semiconductors to hurt the United States. It's the same. I mean, the same thing could be said for, I don't know, say like a crazy virus takes down all of the world and all of your medication ends up being made in China. And then what happens? Who's hurt? Oh, wait, us, because we can't get our medication. It's crazy to rely on China for things that we really need. And so you had Russia that was weaponizing its control of energy drilling and production in Europe. You had China that was weaponizing the rare earth minerals. And then you had a half-dead president named Joe Biden who didn't do shit about any of this. And then enter President Trump, okay? He, I think, in what his demeanor, in his policies, he clearly has understood the importance of rare earth minerals for our economy and our military. And just to kind of, I'm trying to like back end into what is happening today by giving you the history of what has happened on this particular subject. And so I want to play President Trump arguing with President Zelensky in the Oval Office, explaining why it was important to hold his ground on the rare earth minerals. Watch.
I want to have our money secured because we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars. And, you know, they may make a deal, they may not make a deal, they may be Russian someday, or they may not be Russian someday, but we're going to have all this money in there. And I say, I want it back. And I told them that I want the equivalent, like $500 billion worth of rare earth. And they've essentially agreed to do that. So at least we don't feel stupid. Otherwise, we're stupid.
So to his point, this is something that he has been working on for a while. In March, he signed an executive order to make the United States the leading producer and processor of non-fuel minerals, including rare earth minerals. And on his little fact sheet, it said financing, loans, and investment support will be provided for new mineral production projects, including a dedicated critical materials fund established through the United States International Development Finance Corporation in collaboration with the Department of Defense. And then that the Trump administration would coordinate with the private industries to ensure a stable and resilient domestic supply chain. And I'd just like to say, more promises made, promises kept. Keep this one on the list. Check it off, okay? Because last week, the DOD spent $400 million of preferred stock in MP Materials, which operates the only rare earth minerals mine in the United States. They are now the largest shareholder of the company that owns this. And today, Apple agreed to buy $500 million worth of rare earth magnets from that company, MP Materials. So now Apple is coming to the table, and they don't. I mean, the thing is like, honestly, I'd love to hear if you disagree with my take, Eric. I'd love to hear how. I don't know if you do, but my thing is, I always think that there should be. I know we talk a lot about government pressure, and I don't think that the government, generally speaking, should pressure you into making some sort of business financial decision. But I do think when it relates to the national security of this country and relates to keeping our economy here rather than spending all of our money, subsidizing someone else's economy. I do think it's worth like, hey, we should try to get all of these, like Apple. There's no reason Apple should be going off and spending all of this money and being more reliant on China when we can just partner with private industries and just offer that ourselves. And so now MP Materials is going to expand operations and open a second domestic magnet manufacturing facility. So you've got such a contrast now of, just the prior president, Joe Biden, You had China trying to strangle our military. You had China, trying to strangle our economy by controlling all of this with the rare earth minerals. And Biden was seemingly totally fine with it. And now you have President Trump successfully reducing our country's dependence on China in just one more way. I think that's a win.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know about how exactly they go about it, but I don't think there's anybody that disagrees with the idea that whether it's necessary or not, just for your general economy, it's going to be better for you if you, and again, I'm a pro-trade guy, but I'm not stupid. It's going to be largely beneficial for you to be able to have a somewhat localized economy, at least in some capacity, not to the point to where what we have right now, where a lot of the manufacturing, it's not just with what we consider necessary. Most of the manufacturing for the entire world in almost every industry is done through China, right? That's just the reality of it. And how we got there is more of what I've taken exception to, and I know other liberty-minded people take exception to, and that's what can't get lost in all of this. It's never been about, well, whether or not, it's not, that's not the dichotomy. And if it is, it's more of a false one, whether it's like, well, you either want, you have to have these sort of strenuous policies in order to bring back domestic deals or domestic production. I don't believe that absolutely has to happen or it necessitates it. My argument has been very consistent on this particular subject matter, and the biggest crippler of the American industries is the American government. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's been that way historically, even with China. Like, do people not know? I mean, they talk about all these things like even semiconductors and things pertaining to computers, and even the more leisure-based stuff like even toy manufacturing. In your parents' lifetime, most of that was produced in America.
Right.
It was produced in America, right? And it wasn't until the 80s, technically late 70s, but especially 80s going through the 90s, when that just fundamentally changed. And it wasn't just because China unleashed its production and was trading with all these other countries. No, the government got, through fear mongering, was saying, well, you have to have all these rules, and you had this unfair playing field with American production versus Chinese production, where it was illegal to produce things certain ways here. And again, they always did it just like with minimum wage. They always do it in the name of basically fear mongering, saying we have your best interests in mind. But you can import the product from China with them having worse conditions. Right? It never made any sense. So the government is is largely to blame for why we got in this position. So that's really been all I want the American people to understand and learn from. It's you got in this position not just because China is just because reasons like, oh, we're China and we don't pay people next to anything. Is that part of it? Does that play part of their advantage? Yes, it does, but that doesn't take care of the transport issue. Do people not understand how expensive shit is to get from over there on these boats? It's expensive. Trust me. I speak from someone that's in the industry. Though we produce all our comics here, I know others that obviously ship them from over, and the boats itself is almost like a wash in terms of its expenses. So even if it's slave labor that they're utilizing, by the time you get it over here, it would have been cheaper to get it here. The problem is that the infrastructure, like with what's happening right now, it's not there. It used to be. Mm-hmm. And then it just went away. So even if you had the money, and that's always been the hiccup. I talked about this with the toy manufacturing, which is something that we wanted to get in. I could have all the money in the world, I could be the richest man in the world. I can't get it produced in America, not because I don't have the money. It's because the infrastructure isn't there to make it in mass. Yeah. I can get some 3D printer to do like a quantity of 3 or something like that. But if I want to get 10,000 of these things made and painted, you cannot get that done in America. You used to be able to, but you can't anymore. So that's always been the issue. And I'm always going to support, if you're going to free America's economy in any capacity, I'm always for that. The producers need to be able to benefit. We've been getting the short end of the stick, not through just simply trade deficits or whatever you want to call it. We've been getting the short end of the stick because the rules have been unfair and our government set those. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of two things, two like ideal things. And the first thing is corruption, right? Because a lot of the times, people go up and, hey, listen, if you can edge this towards me, then, and then And then that happens. But the second part of that equation is how litigious America is, right?
Yeah, it's terrible, man.
Yeah.
Which causes all these laws to be written to protect people from being sued, which is ridiculous. I had an incident in California, for example, where I had an air conditioner put on the roof, right? And I had a guy turn up. He goes, I need to get on the roof, right? And I was like, okay, here's the step ladder. He goes, is that OSHA? And I'm like,
Jesus Christ.
So your step ladder.
Right? And he was like, no, I can't go on there. And then, this is no joke, just tell you this little story. The guy comes along and he says, I need you to put a fence around the air conditioner on the top of the house,
Shut
right?
up.
This is no joke.
Shut up.
And I need a special valve up there, so when you put the Freon in, you know, it needs so... And the guy looked around and he said, so hang on a minute, you want me, this is no joke, the air conditioning guy goes, so you want me to drill a hole through the roof to put a fence around, breaking the barrier, making more problems. He goes, do you know in the next city across, which was Glendale, the next city across, there are massive lawsuits because they were doing that, because they said that, because they didn't want to fall off the roof.
Wow.
And I walked up and down that roof multiple times, blowing all the leaves off. Like, you know, it's just ridiculous. That has to change. By the way, the guy goes, don't worry, I'm going to call his boss. He called his boss. He went, I put his boss's air conditioning in. Don't worry, you'll be okay. And it went away. I hate to say, but it did. It went away because it was just ridiculous. It was just because they had to do. They're making.
How many
giving
government
themselves a job.
Yes. Yeah. How many government rules and regulations could you name? There have got to be so many of them where it's like, okay, guys, so instead of being trained monkeys, let's think critically about why you're doing the thing that you're doing. What is it? What is the purpose? What is the goal? Can you trash it? Right? Like it's just like, we do ABC. We must do ABC.
It's all procedural.
It's all procedural.
Yeah, that's
None
all
of it is like,
it.
but should we be doing this? If you like this clip and you want to see the full episode, click here. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, come on, you know you do. Click here.